sacred head surrounded by crown of piercing thorn. O bleeding head so wounded, reviled and put to scorn. Our sins have marred the glory of thy most holy face. Yet angel hosts adore thee and tremble as they gaze. I see thy strength and vigor all fading in the strife, and death with cruel rigor bereaving me of life. Oh, agony and dying, oh, love to sinners free. Jesus, all grace supplying, oh, turn thy face on me. In this thy bitter passion, good shepherd, think of me, and thy most sweet compassion, unworthy though I be, beneath the cross abiding, forever would I rest, and thy dear love confiding, and with thy presence blessed. But death too is my ending, in that dread hour of need, my friendless cause befriending, Lord, to my rescue speed. Thyself, O Jesus, trace me, right passage to the grave, and from the cross embrace me, with arms outstretched to save.
Now that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the third day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of an angel who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see Jesus."
Welcome to this, our first chapel after Easter. So the weekend was Easter and we are back to chapel, and the question is the world transformed? So for my friends in Arizona, here in Kansas, it's finally warmed up again. Some of the frost killed some of the buds, but it's nice, and as soon as that happened, the grass started growing. So my grass in the yard needs to be cut. The smells are different, the sounds are different, and the bugs are back. I would imagine our friends in Wisconsin are dealing with the same things, although they might have some of our cold weather still. It's a great time to start thinking about what life is like after the tomb. Yet, we are still sort of entombed as a country, as a world, locked away from each other. And so, maybe today we can ponder how we bring those things together and the practicality of living in a world with COVID and living with our hearts full of God. How does that really manifest? Let's open with a prayer. God, we stand together but apart. We stand conjoined as society in a time that is difficult. We emerge from Easter, where the world at least references what Christ did, and we try to figure out how to make sense of all of it. At a time where we didn't spend time as Christians in pew together or in church, where we still don't spend time together eating around each other, shopping around each other, and when, for many of us, we're getting a little stir-crazy. Help us feel the need to more deeply connect with God and with each other. Help us to find a way to get past the struggles of what it's like to not see people and to really close our eyes and feel connected with those we love in our hearts. Help us to transcend that next to feel connected with people we don't know, but that are sharing the same experience, trapped in their houses and afraid to go out and meet anyone. Help us to find a way to bring that all together, to really be able to assist those who are alone by being present in a way that's not physically there. Help us to understand how to love without physicality next to us, as we know that will bridge us closer to you. Amen.
Then Peter began to speak. I now realize how true it is that God does not show favoritism, but accepts from every nation the one who fears him and does what is right. You know the message God sent to the people of Israel, announcing the good news of peace through Jesus Christ, who is Lord of all. You know what has happened throughout the province of Judea, beginning in Galilee after the baptism that John preached, how God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the Holy Spirit and power, and how he went around doing good and healing all who were under the power of the devil, because God was with him. We are witnesses of everything he did in the country of the Jews and in Jerusalem. They killed him by hanging him on a cross, but God raised him from the dead on the third day and caused him to be seen. He was not seen by all people, but by witnesses whom God had already chosen, by us who ate and drank with him after he rose from the dead. He commanded us to preach to the people and to testify that he is the one whom God appointed as judge of the living and the dead. All the prophets testify about him that everyone who believes in him receives forgiveness of sins through his name.
So I've realized how judgmental I have become since COVID time. Instinctually, I find that I try to figure out as I go to the grocery store who might be sick. I try to figure out if they look old or pale, if they look young and unclean, there's a whole unconscious thing where I try to stay further away from people that I think might be carriers of the virus. And I have to tell you, I didn't really think about it much until I pondered Easter, and specifically the scriptures that talk about Christ being a Christ for everyone. What I've realized as we continue to work here at the school and helping people is that I sort of sort people into those that need help and that I need to help, and those that don't exist for me because I'm not connected with them. And the problem with that is I'm sort of judging the physical issue then on whether or not someone really looks sick. Let's think about truly what it was like for early Christians, at that time's Jews who believed in Christ, right after the death and resurrection. So you have this person you thought was a prophet, you followed him, he said stuff that might have been forth-telling, that might have been that he was something even more than you thought, and at the end of the day you just watched him crucified, or at least know that he is. And now it's done. and you're walking with strangers on the road, and there's some real issues that says if you are not careful, those strangers will turn you in for following this radical guy that just got crucified. And so there you are with strangers walking on a road, your heart heavy, and expecting everyone else to know, but then shocked that a lot of people have no idea what just happened. You better be suspicious. You need to look around and make sure, because who knows who's a spy and who's not. So there's a whole concept of trying to figure out who's safe to talk to. Or you're just brazen enough to bring it up to strangers. Maybe they feel comfortable. Maybe you judge that they look okay, that they look safe. So you talk about it. There is still no concept of what the resurrection is, will be. You're alone. In some ways probably feel a bit misled, a bit betrayed, because if truly Jesus was God, he surely could have avoided all this. You feel empty and surrounded by people that don't feel like your friends. That's that time. Is that any different than how it feels when I go shopping, really? We're going to talk on Sunday about what it's like to be an ambassador of Christ. That assumes that we know all about Christ. Not just Christ as he spoke, not just Christ as the prophet, but Christ as the Redeemer. That's who we're called to be an ambassador to. We're going to hear about how we have to pretty much be ambassadors to everyone, and how that sometimes means that we have to help people who can't walk go to the fountain. We'll hear all about that. Is that any different than helping the person who looks old and frail and scary get the toilet paper down from the top shelf? Would you do it? Because you could violate, indeed, being too close to them. And what if they don't wear a mask? That's the reality that we live in. The reality that we're on a road with strangers that we may or may not trust, who may or may not bring us life or death. And we are charged to help them and be open to them. As we heard, we're charged to consider them brothers and sisters conjoined in that same way. Does a mask really keep you safe? Does a prejudice really keep you safe? Does belief really keep you safe? Those then are our Easter ponders in this first week after Easter. Let me give you a charge then. We got to find a way to continue to connect with people. You know, we have a great YouTube channel. You'll see it at the very end of this particular video. If you haven't seen it, we have all sorts of amazing things to watch, some really funny stuff, but also some practical issues that say how you can make some projects at home that really connect and help people. So much then of that Easter journey in trying to sort of live the concept of resurrection is to find ways to make tangible connection in a world where it's hard to be tangible. An art project, a phone call, a prayer, a poem, a letter for those of you that haven't sent them in a while. Now, part of my charge is you've got to modify that to the world. So if you're used to lick letters, don't. Seal them with Scotch tape so that people feel safe to open them. Your charge then is to look through the lens you've always looked through, especially after Easter, and find a way to make things new. Find a way to make Christ new in your life and those of others. And once you do that, find a way to share it. Share it in a place where we're sort of locked up together, or where people will really worry if you get too close to them at the grocery store, even to give them a card. How do you find fun ways then as your charge? How do you find deep ways to connect together as brothers and sisters on a road where we are all conjoined, and to not feel threatened necessarily by the judgments we make about people, their state, or their health? Go to it then. Thank you. Bless you. And have a great week.